I had just returned from a long weekend hiking trip when I saw it. A stiff, white envelope was taped to my front door, boldly labeled with the words, Homeowners Association Legal Notice, Response Required. I blinked, confused. My small, single-story cabin-style home sat on the edge of the woods, about 20 minutes outside town, tucked into a loose community of scattered homes that valued privacy more than anything. We didn't have sidewalks, we didn't have monthly meetings, and we certainly didn't have an HOA. Yet there it was, an official-looking notice claiming I owed $1,125 in annual dues, plus a $275 late fee and $500 in legal filing costs. I laughed at first, thought it was a prank. But when I opened the letter and saw the name, Karen Whitmore, HOA president, everything clicked into place. I'd seen her once before, during a town zoning meeting, arguing that the forested properties on Ridge Trail should be brought into HOA control to preserve neighborhood integrity. No one had taken her seriously back then. Apparently, she'd taken matters into her own hands. Karen's documents were thorough, too thorough. She'd included photographs of my property, a crudely drawn map highlighting a non-existent HOA boundary that now, conveniently, included my house, and a copy of newly adopted bylaws, showing mandatory compliance by all residents within a 3-mile radius of the original HOA. It was absurd, legally toothless, but bold. I wasn't about to let this go unchecked. I called the number at the bottom of the letter, and sure enough, Karen answered like it was a full-time business. Yes, Mr. Riley, you're now under HOA jurisdiction, she said smugly. Refusal to comply will result in legal consequences, including a lien on your home. That's when I realized, this wasn't some weird scam. Karen was deadly serious, and I wasn't the only one she targeted. Within days, neighbors up and down Ridge Trail reported similar threats. Retirees, veterans, even the young couple who just moved in. Karen, armed with a few self-printed documents and an inflated sense of authority, had declared war on people just trying to live in peace. What she didn't know was, I don't back down from bullies. Karen escalated quickly. When I posted publicly that her HOA claims were fraudulent, she sued me for defamation and noncompliance. I wasn't surprised. Her complaint included exaggerated claims that I had destroyed common area landscape, refused to pay multiple dues notices, and endangered the HOA board with aggressive behavior. Total fiction, but she didn't expect me to show up in court with a binder 3 inches thick, packed with property deeds, legal zoning maps, community charters, and a notarized affidavit from the town clerk confirming there had never been, and could not legally be, a retroactive HOA expansion without unanimous vote and municipal approval. Best of all, I brought along a copy of a state statute that said any HOA formed or expanded without full documented consent of each homeowner was automatically nullified. And I wasn't alone. 5 of my neighbors came to support me. One even brought a document Karen had forged, complete with a fake signature. The judge's face went stone cold as he flipped through my evidence. Mrs. Whitmore, the judge finally said, looking over his glasses. Would you care to explain why you filed a lawsuit based on an HOA that, as of this evidence, appears to not exist under the law? Karen's confident smirk evaporated. She stammered something about community intentions and spirit of governance, but it was over. The judge didn't just toss her case. He issued a formal injunction dissolving her rogue HOA entity entirely. Her attempt to illegally claim governance over non-consenting properties was ruled as fraudulent, and she was referred to the district attorney for investigation. Karen stood there, stunned and pale, clutching her folder while cheers broke out in the courtroom gallery. I shook hands with my neighbors. The judge even gave me a nod of appreciation, and the man next to me, John from 3 doors down, laughed as he held up his proof of non-HOA membership sheet. Just 3 minutes of legal firepower, and her whole scheme crumbled. But I had a feeling it wasn't the last we'd hear from Karen. And I was right. What came next would test us in ways we never expected. After the courtroom celebration died down and the judge's ruling spread through the community like wildfire, things seemed calm. Almost too calm. Karen disappeared from public view for a while. No Facebook rants, no flyers stuffed into mailboxes, no suspicious inspections of people's yards. I should have known silence from her wasn't peace, it was planning. About 2 weeks after the hearing, I noticed something strange. Small white surveyor flags placed along the edge of my property. Then came orange spray paint lines. And finally, a construction permit posted on a wooden stake right on the edge of my gravel driveway. I called the town's planning department immediately. Yeah, a woman named Karen Whitmore filed a utility access request, the clerk told me. She claims she's expanding an approved community park and got preliminary approval based on a development map. My blood ran cold. Karen was back, and this time she was trying to sneak onto my land through a different route, zoning manipulation. She wasn't trying to claim HOA control now, she was using land use permits to weasel her way into legal leverage. And worse, it looked like she might have bribed someone in the local office. I spent the next week digging through everything: land records, recent permit logs, public hearing transcripts. What I found was shocking. Karen had formed a nonprofit organization, Friends of Ridge Trail, and filed a petition with the zoning board to convert unused natural space into a public recreation area. Except that land wasn't unused. It was part of my backyard and 2 other adjacent properties. And she hadn't contacted a single homeowner, she'd just printed out fake community support signatures again. This time, I wasn't the only one furious. My neighbor, Eva, who had inherited her place from her late grandfather, stormed into the planning office and demanded a full audit. Her name had been forged too. That triggered a review, and what followed made headlines in our town paper. Karen had falsified support for 8 separate land use petitions, all tied back to properties she had once tried to pull into her fake HOA. Apparently, she was attempting to create a green space buffer zone that would raise surrounding home values, and she owned 3 nearby lots that were now for sale. It was a money grab, plain and simple. And now, she had a target on her back. We decided enough was enough. I gathered everyone Karen had targeted, 15 households total, and hosted a community meeting right in my backyard. Over burgers and lemonade, we laid out the facts. Every single one of us had been forged, manipulated, or harassed. And worse, some of our newer neighbors had nearly paid Karen illegal initiation dues before backing out last minute. We pooled resources, hired a legal investigator, and filed a collective complaint with the state attorney general's office. But we didn't stop there. John, our resident tech guy, set up a website, KarenWatch.org. It chronicled every illegal HOA notice, every fake permit, every zoning abuse. Within days, it was being shared on local Facebook groups and the Nextdoor app. People from surrounding neighborhoods began sharing their own stories. Karen had tried this in other areas too, under different names. Turns out, she'd been kicked out of an HOA leadership board years earlier in another state. She wasn't just annoying, she was a serial manipulator. And now, the court, the town council, and the whole county were watching. The pressure worked. One rainy Tuesday morning, town officials arrived unannounced at Karen's home with documents in hand. I watched from across the street with a cup of coffee in hand as they knocked on her door, clipboards ready. She opened it, and even from a distance, I could see her face go pale. The planning department had not only revoked all of her pending permits, they'd suspended her nonprofit's right to operate pending investigation. The county issued a cease and desist on all land use actions tied to her name. Even the real estate listings for her lots were pulled down until the fraud inquiries cleared. And then came the lawsuit, this time not from us, but from the town itself. Karen was being sued for zoning fraud, document forgery, and property encroachment. She tried to deflect, blaming her assistants, and calling it all a misunderstanding. But no one believed her anymore. Even her few supporters went quiet. And though justice was landing hard, we all knew Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat easily. She'd lost the court, she'd lost the community, but she hadn't lost her twisted ambition. And what she did next caught us all off guard. You'd think that after being publicly humiliated in court, exposed for forging permits, and slapped with multiple lawsuits, Karen would have finally crawled back into obscurity. But no, true to form, she wasn't done. About a month after the town's investigation shut her nonprofit down, Karen tried a new tactic. She filed as a neighborhood conservator, invoking an obscure state law that allowed individuals to apply for oversight of land deemed abandoned, unmanaged, or in community disrepair. It was a loophole used in some rural areas to preserve hiking trails or restore old barns. But Karen twisted it, filing for conservatorship over 4 properties, including mine, claiming they lacked visual harmony and were attracting undesirable attention. The kicker, she submitted altered photographs of my backyard, including a digitally edited image of a rusted car that didn't even exist on my property. I only found out when I received a letter from the court notifying me of an upcoming review hearing. I was stunned. The woman was relentless, and this time, she'd managed to find a sympathetic clerk who hadn't been looped into her history. She almost got it past the system, almost. But this time, we were ready. I showed up to the review board hearing with a folder thicker than the last one, loaded with fresh evidence, including metadata from the original, doctored photos she submitted. I even brought in a digital forensic expert who proved Karen had edited the images using basic photo software. The real ace, though, came from an anonymous whistleblower, someone from Karen's own nonprofit circle, who leaked emails revealing that her ultimate plan was to build a nature trail complex that would run straight through our properties and then connect to the luxury lots she still owned. In one email, she literally wrote, "Once I secure conservatorship, I can finally push them out." That was all the review board needed to hear. They not only denied her application, they formally barred her from applying for any conservator rights in the state again. What's more, she was fined $10,000 for filing fraudulent documents and was hit with another round of criminal charges. The final cherry on top, her own whistleblower had turned state's witness in exchange for immunity, and Karen's attorney immediately withdrew from her case. It was finally over. In the weeks that followed, Ridge Trail slowly returned to what it once was, a quiet, private place full of quirky neighbors, friendly weekend barbecues, and a shared sense of peace. We rebuilt the fences Karen had tried to cross, figuratively and literally. The town council issued new guidelines to prevent future HOA overreach, and several of us, including Eva, John, and myself, were invited to serve on a new advisory board to oversee property rights protections. Karen, meanwhile, sold her remaining lots at a loss and moved out of town without a word. No farewell, no apology. Just silence. But her legacy left one lasting lesson: never underestimate the power of a community that refuses to be pushed around. What began as a single fraudulent letter ended with a courtroom packed with cheering neighbors and a ruling that echoed beyond the wood-paneled walls. As for me, I still keep that original letter in a frame on my wall. A reminder that justice doesn't always come with sirens or fanfare. Sometimes, it comes in the form of a gavel, a few pages of evidence, and a community that stands together when it matters most.